as characters. You know, the Shaw character is a man of experience, and you don't get to do that in your 20s. You know, you need to build and same with, you know, the Hobbs character. This is a guy who's been there, done that, and to be there and done that, you need years behind you.
Just Jason Statham, unbothered, unfiltered, and done. The man who has spent 3 decades weaponizing silence as a brand suddenly had something to say, and Hollywood was not ready for it, who pushed him past the point of no return. And what does it say about an industry where even the toughest men alive can reach their limit? This is not a gossip reel. This is a portrait of a man defined by one principle: respect the work. And what happens when 6 of the biggest names in the world refused to meet him there? The story of Jason Statham's Feuds begins long before any specific argument on any specific set. It begins in the East End of London, where a former diver and street market trader watched the film industry from the outside and decided, when he finally got in, he would never take a single moment of it for granted. That background, the hustle, the graft, the absence of safety nets, became his code. You show up, you do the work, you respect the people who showed up before you and the ones standing beside you. It sounds simple. In Hollywood, it is apparently revolutionary, which brings us to Vin Diesel. No one expected Statham to say it out loud. For years, fans of the Fast franchise watched Deckard Shaw and Dominic Toretto snarl at each other on screen and assumed the tension was craft, choreography, a well-calibrated performance. It was not. What played out on screen was the clean, edited version of something far messier happening behind the cameras. A clash of working philosophies so fundamental that no amount of stunt coordination could paper over it. On the set of Hobbs and Shaw, Statham operated the way he always has. Scheduled, prepared, precise, Diesel operated differently. Insiders described repeated requests to rewrite scenes, not to serve the story, but to ensure Toretto's mythology remained untouched, undiminished, unrivaled. Working with him felt like babysitting a teenager in a bodybuilder's body, Statham said, demanding, always rewriting to make himself look bigger. It wears you down. There was no shouting match, no on-set confrontation, just the slow, grinding exhaustion of a man who came to work and kept finding someone rearranging the furniture. What makes Statham's frustration significant is what he chose not to do. He did not feed the feud publicly. He did not take sides in the Diesel-Johnson war that was burning through the franchise at the same time. He simply refused to play. And in a franchise built on the myth of family, his refusal to perform brotherhood when he didn't feel it said more than any quote ever could. By 2025, the 2 men move in different orbits, professional when proximity demands it, distant when it does not enemies. Something colder than that. The Steven Seagal entry is different in texture, sharper in its honesty. Statham has always held martial arts as sacred ground, not a prop, not a persona, but a discipline requiring years of genuine submission to something larger than yourself. So when Seagal's name came up, something in him snapped that politeness couldn't contain. He turned martial arts into a pantomime, Statham said. He walks around like he says the second coming of Bruce Lee, except Bruce Lee actually did the work. Every word measured, every word meant. Seagal's response was, characteristically, a masterclass in missing the point entirely. Jason S. and a talented stuntman, he scoffed, but he is not on my level. To Statham, that answer was the argument. A man so consumed by his own legend that he could recognize the very critique being made. There's no reconciliation on the horizon, no quiet dinner where they agree to disagree. Statham has moved on. He doesn't hate Seagal. He has done something far more devastating. He finds him irrelevant. Shia LaBeouf and Jared Leto arrive in this story as a pair, not because their feuds were similar, but because they represent the same fundamental problem from 2 different angles. Both men believe chaos is a creative tool. Statham believes it is an excuse. LaBeouf reportedly erupted when Statham passed on a project, citing him as wrong for the role. A professional judgment LaBeouf took as a personal assault. "Jason's just a mechanic who throws punches." LaBeouf fired back. "That's not acting. The irony is thick." LaBeouf, who arrived on sets demanding the crew call him by his character's name, and reportedly sent a message Statham described only as far from professional, lecturing someone else on craft. The Leto chapter has a single, almost comic scene at its center. A preliminary meeting at a coffee shop during which Leto refused to break character, refused to use his real name, and expected everyone present to play along. Statham's patience, famously thin for theater that serves no one, evaporated immediately. "Mate, we re in a coffee shop," he said later. Dropped the act. The collaboration ended before it started. Leto reframed the rejection as proof of his artistic seriousness. Statham reframed it as proof of what he'd already suspected: two men. Two entirely different definitions of the word professional. Neither wrong, exactly, but absolutely incompatible. Mark Wahlberg is perhaps the most personal entry on this list because it stretches back the furthest. The Italian Job, 2003, two men sharing a set for the first time. Statham came with stunt drills and scene preparation. Wahlberg came with side calls for his various businesses, a habit of running late, and an easy joking energy Statham had no patience for. "We here to make a movie, not babysit a brand," he said later. But what lingered wasn't the lateness. It was the gap between Wahlberg's blue-collar public image and his very private, very billionaire lifestyle. "You can sell blue-collar and live billionaire," Statham said. "Pick a lane." Wahlberg laughed it off, and then said quietly, on the record, that Statham was perhaps too intense, and, crucially, that he didn't need stunt doubles to look tough. That line found its mark. Producers spent years trying to reunite them, sensing box office gold in the tension. Both men said no, every time, without apparent regret. And then there is Dwayne Johnson. The one name on this list where the word feud does quite fit, because what exists between them is something more complicated than animosity. It is two mountains occupying the same narrow ridge. Their contracts during Furious 7 stated, in plain language, that neither of their characters could lose a fight. What sounds absurd became a genuine logistical crisis for stunt coordinators, tasked with building sequences where every punch thrown had to be mathematically answered. Vin Diesel reportedly implemented an actual counting system to track the balance. "It's not fighting," Statham joked later. "It's negotiating." Johnson, with his characteristic directness, acknowledged the obvious. "It's not always easy being an alpha, and it's two alphas." When Hobbs and Shaw was announced, handing each man his own film and a safe distance from the other, fans celebrated a gift. Insiders described it as crisis management. Universal had simply run out of ways to keep the peace. What remains between Statham and Johnson today is not warmth. It is something rarer in Hollywood: honest mutual acknowledgement. They don't share drinks, they don't exchange messages, but they understand each other with a clarity that friendship often obscures. As one crew member put it, they don't love each other, but they know they need each other. In an industry that runs on performed affection, that might be the most authentic relationship. Either man has 6 names, 6 clashes, and underneath every single one of them, the same question: what do you owe the work? Not the franchise, not the paycheck, not the mythology you've spent years constructing around yourself. The work itself. The discipline of showing up, being present, respecting everyone on that set from the lead actor to the grip-hauling cable in the dark. Statham built his career on that principle because he had no other choice. He came from nowhere, with no safety net, and the only thing he ever had full control over was how hard he was willing to try. It became the lens through which he sees everything, and everyone. The feuds with Diesel, Seagal, LaBeouf, Leto, Wahlberg, and Johnson, aren't about jealousy or wounded pride. They about a man who holds something sacred in countering people who treat it carelessly. And the quiet, devastating truth, the one that makes this story universally human, is that every person watching this has felt exactly that, has shown up fully and found someone else half present, has tried to do something right, surrounded by people optimizing for something else entirely. Jason Statham is not the hero of this story. He's the mirror. The real question his feuds leave behind isn't whether he was right or wrong. It's this: what are you willing to walk away from to protect the one thing you actually believe in?